Violated, so frustrated, irritated by the one you thought you loved. It happens all the time. You lie when you look me in the eye. All I wanted was to hear the truth from you, but you never comply. Yet I wonder why I feel so violated, so frustrated, irritated by the one you thought you loved. Got no patience, it won't take it. Irritated by the one you thought you loved. I put all my trust in you, but you threw it all aside. Never have I felt so used by someone like you. How could I be so blind? Yet I wonder why I feel so violated, so frustrated, irritated by the one you thought you loved. Got no patience, it won't take it. Irritated by the one you thought you loved. And now you're gone, so glad you're out of my life. And now that you've gone away, I'm so glad you're out of my mind. That's why I felt violated, so frustrated, irritated by the one you thought you loved. Violated, so frustrated, irritated by the one you thought you loved. Got no patience, it won't take it. Irritated by the one you thought you loved. They say freak when you're singled out. Red filters through. So lay down, the threat is real. When inside
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest episode of I'm No Joe, your home for all things combat sports and the place where every armchair quarterback can feel like Eddie Bravo. The views and opinions presented on the I'm No Joe channel belong solely to the person expressing them, no one else. If we say it, that means we meant it. That being said, this show does contain adult themes, adult content, and general shit that you shouldn't be letting your kids intake. Be advised, viewer discretion is recommended. Proceed at your own risk. You've been warned. If it's Thursday, it's I'm No Joe. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of appropriate ages, to the latest episode of the I'm No Joe podcast, the show where every armchair quarterback can feel like an Eddie Bravo. Today, unlike most days, I am rocking this bitch solo. So, little tidbit to those of you who are new, I am the meter. I am a man of many things. The one that I do predominantly the most is talk punchy, kicky things. All things combat sports, wrestling, boxing, MMA, jiu-jitsu, karate, you name it. If it's a combat sport, we generally cover it here on the I'm No Joe podcast. The reason I originally started the I'm No Joe podcast is because a good friend of mine, Vape, kind of reminded me the fact that I talk about combat sports all the fucking time, whether people are listening or not. So this show is essentially what would be happening to me in my normal life without a camera. Being as how I'm such a hardcore fan of combat sports and I talk about it all the time, my good friend Rye suggested to me, why don't you just make it a show so other people who enjoy that can benefit from your rantings and ramblings as well? Luckily, I did that and had some friends who are gracious enough once in a while to pop in and break things down with me, give you their point of view, give you a little outside perspective, and help me break shit down. Tonight just happens to be one of those nights where we don't have any of those folks available, so it's just me and you and the crazy shit that has gone on in the last week since we saw you fine folks. So first and foremost, thank you to everybody who is out there catching this. I appreciate you. You can follow the I'm No Joe podcast if you dig this sort of thing on all social media platforms or on Facebook, Instagram. If you're seeing this, I'm sorry, you can catch the all audio version of this show on anchor.fm/I'm No Joe. If you're listening on anchor.fm/I'm No Joe, thank you for helping us spread the audio version of this show, but you can also see what these faces talking to you actually look like live Thursday nights over on youtube.com/I'm No Joe. If you really enjoy what we do around here, patreon.com/I'm No Joe to help us do what we do. Get your name at the end of every episode as a thank you. Gives you access to behind the scenes, the unaired footage, and frankly, unairable footage that we just can't put on YouTube here. So we appreciate we appreciate you helping us do what we do. That being said, this is 4th of July weekend here in the United States, and there is no major combat sports in any organization, thankfully. Ironically enough, there's a lot of combat sports taking place on September 11th, but for whatever reason, we managed to keep 4th of July clear. Excuse me. That being said, we do have a little bit of news here. Let me see if I can get this other window pulled up in the background real quick. Excuse me. Allergies are fucking killer right now. Here we go. Okay. So, before we get into the news and recent events, and boy, was there some news and a couple of oh shit recent events since we talked to you folks last. I do like to start these shows with a little bit of a recap if I am able to. So tonight we are going to do just that. First things first, we are going to jump right in to the Cyril Gahn versus Alexander Volkov cars recaps. I don't know that we're going to see Yancy Medeiros in the UFC again. I don't. I like Yancy Medeiros. He is absolutely a fan favorite. If you've seen Yancy fight, you kind of gotta love him for the most part until recently. Um, the Yancy Medeiros was introduced to the UFC was a bad motherfucker, and the next Hawaiian guy to come up and start kicking ass and taking names. Unfortunately, the Yancy Medeiros that we saw last weekend is not that same gentleman anymore. And as we said, this is a young man's game, and time makes fools of us all. So you can only really realistically stay in the combat sports world for so long before time catches up with you, and it inevitably does. It seems like Yancy Medeiros has hit that point. He's obviously not completely, useless or worthless, but compared to the level of competition you see in the UFC, even by a fellow or a fairly newer guy like Damir Hadzovic. And credit to Hadzovic, he came out there and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He didn't think of this as a fight against somebody like Yancy. He just went out there, did his damn thing, won the fight, unanimous decision. Good on you, sir. But that'll bring us to the second fight of the card, where the drama begins in last weekend's setup. Little premise going in here. First and foremost, Charles Rosa versus Justin James on paper is a very interesting fight. Numbers wise, they're relatively close. They're appreciably similar on paper. In the real world, Charles Rosa is a soup can with his own jiu-jitsu hype implied, whereas Justin James is a little rock'em sock'em robot with some other skills for the most part. This should have been teed up for Justin James to just beat the shit out of Charles Rosa, in my opinion. Pretty much everybody agreed last week, I believe. Interesting side note, Justin James actually bet his entire show money on himself. He was that confident he was going to be able to go in and just beat the shit out of Charles Rosa. Well, I will say this, for the most part, he absolutely did beat the shit out of Charles Rosa, but it wasn't a complete domination. There was back and forths, and there were moments where I wouldn't say he was in trouble, but he wasn't controlling the fight as much as he could have been. End of the day, if you leave the fight in the hands of judges, knowing some of the judges that the UFC uses, you're quite literally taking your own future and gambling with it, more so than betting on yourself and actually gambling with your future. And in this situation, we got some stereotypically horrible UFC judges, and they gave a split decision win to Charles Rosa. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think it was a dominant performance, but I think Justin James absolutely won that fight handily, start to finish. And I think the UFC's incompetent judging just cost Justin James not only his show money that he bet on himself, but now he doesn't get his win money or the potential bonus from the fight of the night that he would have been eligible for. Not that this was fight of the night by any stretch of the imaginations, but Charles Rosa didn't win that fucking fight. Moving along from there, Julia on Julia violence did not disappoint, not in the slightest. It was kind of exactly what I thought it was going to be. The angry panda got angry and went in and put in work. Julia Avila, the angry panda herself, is absolutely becoming a name to watch in the ladies 135 division. I'm not saying she's going to go take Amanda out next week or anything. She's definitely still got some areas that she can polish up, but she's a relatively newer fighter for the UFC. And that's a very few and far between thing these days, especially somebody new in the bantamweight division. Most of the new ladies that are coming in are usually coming in at strawweight or flyweight. New bantamweights who are serious and legitimate are few and far between. So it's nice to see one coming in, kicking ass and taking names. And she did. I've been saying since that episode, since that season of fucking Ultimate Fighter, that Julia Stoliarenko did not deserve to be in the UFC. They brought her in anyway. Ta-da. That'll bring us to one of the bigger oh shit moments of the early card. I am a big fan. They've got it here as Isaac Villanueva, but I'm pretty goddamn sure the gentleman's name is Ike Villanueva. A little weird to see the UFC making name mistakes. It's not uncommon to see him make picture mistakes. Names are a little weird. Ike Villanueva uh, came out, tried to do the best he could, but god damn if Marcin Prachnio did not just lay him the fuck out. He got absolutely leveled. Um, props to Prachnio. Props to Prachnio. And then we got a double up because the submission from Julia just kind of kicked off a little chunk of ass whooping there on the prelim cards. We got the submission from Julia, then we got the knockout from Prachnio. Then in the next fight, in what was essentially set up for Warley Alves to have a softball tee, easy out of the park shot in welcoming newcomer, literal last minute replacement Jeremiah Wells. I think he got a little high on his own supply, started smelling a little too much of what he was selling, and Jeremiah Wells came in knowing exactly what he was capable of. 30 seconds into round two, he showed us exactly that. He fucking slept Warley Alves very, very handily. Jeremiah Wells is definitely another newcomer to take or to keep an eye on, rather. Memento, my nose is running and I don't want to keep sniffling. Sorry about that. See, when you're running solo, it's a little less or a little more distracting when things like that happen. When there's other people on the show with me, it's easier to pass the microphone for a moment, as it were. Anyhow, moving along from Warley Alves getting his fucking head knocked clean off. The dude in the wolf hat, as he is affectionately being referred to by a lot of the casuals and the journalists, Shavkat Rachmanov. Literally wore a wolfskin hat to the weigh-ins, and it caught everyone's attention, obviously, because that's not something a lot of people do. So they've been calling him the dude in the wolf hat. Holy shit, just smooth as a baby's ass. Subbed the absolute shit out of Michel Prazeres. Michel Prazeres. Dude, that motherfucker was slick. Keep an eye on that dude. And then to complete the full bingo card in our quote unquote premier prelim fight of the evening, Kennedy Nchukwu, I think it's Nchukwu, just flatlined Daniel Marquez. Looked good for most of the fight. It wasn't like it was an out of nowhere shot. He was doing his goddamn thing. Ouch. The whole, like I said, the whole prelims after that Justin James fight, Julia Avila said, we gonna get this. And then every single fight from there on out on the prelims had a fucking finish, whether it was a knockout, submission, something, every single fight from there on out. And that roll kept going. We got to see Renato Moicano stepping in at 155 pounds, one of the biggest world beaters in the fucking on the planet, rather. See, live, mistakes happen. One of the biggest world breakers on the planet at featherweight has officially moved up to lightweight, and he is looking like a fucking stud at lightweight as well. Renato Moicano was a problem for pretty much every big name in 45 when he was in 45. Now that he is up at 55, hot damn, those boys better watch out, because if he's still got enough in him to put a run together, that could be a big problem for everyone in the top of the division. Moving on from there, the Dirty Bird did fucking work. Credit to Dalby for being a tough son of a bitch. He hung in there, but the Dirty Bird just absolutely fucking dominated him. Tim Means did what he wanted when he wanted for the entirety of that goddamn fight, and I'm real happy to see him back on a fucking win streak. Then we got the Andre Fili Daniel Pineda fights. Excuse me. I'm not a fan of Andre Fili. Have not been. Do not see myself ever being a fan of Andre Fili. Touchy Fili can go fuck himself, as far as I'm concerned. Not that great of a fighter. Definitely not that great of a person. Not really any star power there, just ego, in my opinion. But as I try and make a point of saying very often on this show, give credit where credit is due, regardless of how you feel about the person. And like I've made it fairly clear, I think at this point, fuck Andre Fili. But he came out last weekend and was doing fucking work on Pineda. I will absolutely give him that. He was kicking the shit out of Daniel Pineda. How that fight went as long as it did after the eye got made an issue, I don't understand. How it became a no contest and not a DQ after we saw excuse me, after we saw some of the biggest fucking fights of the year in the exact same situation get ruled DQs as opposed to no contests. Maybe that's why there are so many no contests now, is because they realize how bad they had fucked up in some of the other ones being ruled DQs. Maybe. I think not every time. And I'll put it this way. It's less often than it isn't, but there are situations I can understand where a nut shot happens and a dude can't continue and there's no need to run that fight back. Or it was 4:57 in the third round and an eye poke happens and the doctor won't let the fight continue. I can see those fights not needing to be immediately run back. 45 seconds into the second fucking round with an eye poke, run that fight back. Leon Scott versus Bilal Muhammad with the eye poke, second fucking round, run that fucking fight back. Like, there's no reason not to make it. Neither one of those, this situation or the Bilal versus Leon situation, impact the division. Otherwise, neither one of those dudes in either fight are going for the title next, realistically. Remake both fights. God damn it. Wide awake. Can't stop yawning. Remake both of those fights, put them on the same goddamn card. Leon versus Bilal, Andre versus Danielle, Pineda. Put them both back together. We deserve both fights again, and neither one of those guys should benefit from a fucking no contest. Moving along from there, Raoni Barcelos came out looking like a fucking monster, but not enough to stop Timur Valiev. Them crazy little guys, man. Those little guys go so goddamn hard in the paint. It's so fucking ridiculous. You gotta love those fights. I don't agree with the majority decision. I think that should have been Barcelos' fight, if anything, or a draw. I don't see Valiev having done more, even though he was, I guess you could say, the more active looking fighter. He didn't really do much more, but he looked like he was busier, and I think that's why he ultimately got the decision. That'll bring us to the co-main event from last weekend. OSP weighing in at I believe it was 142, and Tanner Boser weighing in at, 242. And Tanner Boser weighing in at 246. So they were essentially the same size for the most part going into this fight. Stupid yawns. And OSP had said going into this fight that the reason he took this fight is because walking around, he and Tanner Boser are about the exact same weight. So it wasn't like he was fighting a dude who's cutting to make 265. They went in there about the same weight. But for whatever reason, OSP was, for lack of a better term, content to counter. Like he didn't want to go first, or he just couldn't figure out how to go first. And it ultimately cost him his consciousness. Now, I will say this. There was a very controversial fence grab where the referee yelled at Boser. It was clear as day he grabbed the fence. The commentators made mention of him grabbing the fence. It was another one of those situations where grabbing the fence literally saved your ass, but you got away with it because he didn't get the fight stopped and he didn't get a point taken away for it. And OSP and his team have come out since then and said that they are appealing the commission to have this turned over to a no contest and get the loss removed from his record because he got clipped after the fence grab and Tanner laid him the fuck out. But it was only possible because Tanner Boser grabbed the goddamn fence. It's clear as fucking day. It happened during the fight. The referee called it out during the fight. The commentators called it out during the fight. And then afterwards, when OSP said they're going to appeal this based on the fence grab, Tanner Boser actually had the fucking brass balls to come out and say he didn't grab the fence. He doesn't know what the fuck anyone's talking about. So huge loss of what little respect I had for Tanner Boser now. He's calling people out off that victory and denying that he grabbed the fence in an issue where the fence grab quite literally led to him getting the victory. I get that you don't want to lose that W, but to say that it didn't happen is a little fucking ridiculous when the clip is out there. I encourage everybody to go out there after the episode is over. Go look up Tanner Boser versus OSP. You'll see the goddamn fence grab. So fuck him. But moving along to the main event of last weekend, Cyril Gahn versus Alexander Volkov. We'll get into the implications here in a minute, but this fight to me kind of played out exactly how I felt it should have. What it did was it gave us 5 clear rounds to see that neither Alexander Volkov or Cyril Gahn are ready for a title fight, realistically. Neither one of them have the fire and the drive and the skill set and ability to do what needs to be done to take that fucking heavyweight belt. That being said, at the end of the day, because it did go to the judge's decision, they gave the W to Cyril Gahn. Volkov, who you could tell clearly had much more reach on his strikes. I don't care what the numbers are. I'm telling you, watching the fight, Volkov was able to achieve a much longer reach with his strikes, but couldn't utilize it for whatever fucking reason. And it ended up giving the W to Cyril Gahn, who we will talk about a little more here in just a little bit because of it. We did get a quote unquote regular pair of performance of the nights and a fight of the night bonus. Fucking yawn. Fight of the night, Barcelos versus Valiev. I'm telling you, them fucking little guys came out and went crazy. Performance of the night bonuses went to Marcin Prachnio for that fucking hard ass knockout, and Kennedy Nchukwu, for his hard ass knockout. Very, very handily earned in both situations, in my opinion here. As of now, we still have not had medical suspensions released from last weekend, so we actually don't have that to go over. But there are a couple of other things from last weekend before we get into the little bit of news that we've got here for this week, and then I'll let you guys get out of here. Bellator 261 was a thing last weekend. I completely fucking forgot about it, as did everyone else in the world who did not have a family member or a close personal friend involved in the fucking show. Moldavsky versus Johnson for a heavyweight interim title that no one gives a shit about. Neither Moldavsky versus Johnson, excuse me, neither more Moldavsky or Johnson deserve to be in a position of the belt, let alone an interim belt. So the whole thing was literally just stalling and kicking the can down the road so people wouldn't pay attention. It didn't really work because no one really paid attention, anyways. Nothing really big came out of that show. The other thing that happened literally at the exact same time, and no one gave a shit unless they had, again, a family member or close personal friend or loved one involved in the show, was PFL that went down Friday night as well. And again, sucked out loud. Um, these organizations that are not the UFC, that keep saying that they are as good as the UFC, really need to start understanding the concept of promoting like the UFC, because very rarely is there a weekend where some of my casual friends, at least one or two of them, aren't like, hey, isn't there a fight coming up this weekend? And they generally mean a UFC fight, whether it's one good fight on a card or a huge card coming up. Most of my casual friends, because I talk about fucking combat sports so much, are at least somewhat aware of when the bigger, the more noteworthy events happen. Even most of my hardcore friends don't talk much about PFL or Bellator in general. And none of them, there was no chatter that I was aware of in any circle on any social media platform, really. Like I said, other than people who had a family member or loved one or a close personal friend who were involved in the event, excited about Bellator or PFL last weekend. Um, those organizations both had fairly good sized events. I believe the PFL card was the monster. I believe they had a 6-hour prelim card or a 7-hour prelim card before the 4-fight main or 5-fight main card, which is fucking stupid and probably part of the reason why most people didn't fucking realize it was a thing. But the one thing that did crack out last weekend, aside from the UFC, that I did wish we would have gotten a little more time to talk about, but I'm not really too terribly sad we didn't, was Submission Underground 24. Uncle Chael was back at it last weekend, which may be why we didn't have Fresh Show 3 last week, because he was out looking for the Snatch a Chael Hugathon, getting everything ready to go for that. But not the greatest Submission Underground event they have put on, I'm not going to lie. It wasn't terrible. There was some good matchups. Um, Amanda Lowen is their 10th planet badass. She is the ladies' Mason Fowler, for lack of a better comparison, over there. She did exactly what she does, and she retained the ladies' belt over there against a competitor who I still feel didn't earn a fucking title shot, showed up, got one win, got a title shot over there. So um, she's making a Mason Fowler run over there. It's not like there's a shortage of ladies in Submission Underground. If these ladies want a belt, we need to start seeing some higher level competition, not just one shot, come in, win a fight or a match, and then get a fucking title shot. If you want legitimacy to your reign, to your credibility, you have to earn it in the world of jiu-jitsu. That's one of the reasons I love jiu-jitsu so much. You don't just get a name because you're popular. You get a name because you've done the work. If you can't do the work, you don't get the popularity. You have to be able to do the thing at the end of the day. Um, it's starting to become kind of obvious over there that Mason Fowler is the man to do the damn thing in Submission Underground, because every time he shows up, he defends and wins. He doesn't take it to a decision. I believe he's defended his belt 6 times now and has yet to see a judge's decision on it at the end of the day. Won every one by a tap or time. Amanda is quickly becoming the ladies' version of that, but I really wish we would start seeing a little more of the ladies over there earn their fucking title shots instead of a one-shot win. Now, to be fair, guys like Alex Fowler or Alex Fowler. um, I can't remember his last fucking name right now for the life of me. Alex got a title shot 2 events ago off a single win over Boogie Martinez. So there have been several men who have gotten the same treatment, and I don't agree with that either. I think if you're going to get a shot at the fucking title, you should earn your shot at the title, which is why I did think that it was nice to see Kyle Boehm. I'm not 100% sure how he pronounces that. Vinny Magalace's tag team jiu-jitsu partner win the tournament, beating out a couple of guys that I thought were gonna really get in there and take the shot. I really thought Roberto Jimenez was gonna be the dude to beat, because the last time they did this tournament for the original belt, Jimenez was the dude, and I thought maybe he's got what it takes this time to come back and to take it and to show him how it's supposed to be done. No, not quite the case yet, but he's also 22 years old, so he's another one of those young dudes who's already giving the fucking pros, the aged, the seasoned veterans, I believe is the proper respectful term, giving the seasoned veterans a serious run for their fucking money. So the men's side of Submission Underground is absolutely starting to earn their fucking stripes and build a pretty deep talent level on the roster over there. The ladies side still has a lot to work for it. So I am very curious to see Kyle Boehm versus Mason Fowler, because Kyle is a beast. Kyle's a big boy. I believe he is like 250-ish, whereas Mason, I believe, pushes up to and around 200, but not much more over that. Mason's a fairly good-sized gentleman, but he's not a monster. He's not a big dude, which is, I think, part of the reason why so many people like him. He's a very Joe every guy kind of person. He's not a monster. He's not a big fucking muscle-bound dude. He looks kind of like a normal average dude. Unless you knew better, you wouldn't realize that he's a fucking world beater. He's a fucking, as Joe Rogan puts it, a nerd assassin. Everyday normal life until mats get hit and then you die. So I'm very curious to see how Kyle versus Mason works out, because Kyle is big and he's much bigger than Mason, I believe. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. That being said, there are some interesting news and recent events to go over. First and foremost, obviously, if you didn't notice by the thumbnail or the opening GIF, Joe Schilling was in the news this week. It's been, as generally is the case with interesting stories like this, piecemealed out. Originally, Joe Schilling shared this video on his Instagram of him walking from across a restaurant or a bar, kind of hard to tell. Some tiny little loudmouth dude showing the fuck out in front of a girl. Joe goes to walk around the dude. The dude bumps Joe. Joe kind of brushes it off and goes to walk past him. And then you hear the dude go, "Hey," and you see Joe stop in his tracks, and he turns around, and you see this little salmon shirt wearing, tie flex and fucktard pump fake on Joe Schilling. Bear in mind, this dude probably comes up to about Joe Schilling's nipples or so. Typical bro out, just I believe the best terminology I have heard this gentleman described as is an ass-kicking magnet. If you've ever been out in public, you have seen the guy who will walk up to the largest guy in the club drunk as shit and go, "Well, fuck you, man, you're a bitch. I'll kick your ass." The dude that you could literally just knock the fuck into next Tuesday, but he insists on starting the fight. We call him the Andrew Dearden effect, because we had a guy that was like that, who would start every fight knowing he was going to get his ass kicked, knowing he didn't have a chance and shouldn't start the fight, and he would start the fight. He would instigate fights. This guy clearly instigates a fight with Joe Schilling. Joe Schilling hands him a fucking two-piece, no soda needed, because the guy's already on the ground at that fucking point. And then Joe walks away. Well, Instagram took that video down, saying that it was harassment or bullying. So it made its way back around on other people's accounts, since people like this kind of story. Come to find out, a lot of people were trying to shit on Joe Schilling for that. And then we got the rest of the actual story because at first glance, it could easily be perceived as Joe was looking for a way or a reason to knock this motherfucker out. And honestly, it doesn't appear that there was any reason not to knock this fucking guy out. We have found out since then that this guy is a regular at this establishment where Joe Schilling was having a nice meal and drink. Um, this guy is a regular problem at that establishment. He is constantly harassing ladies. He is harassing the staff. He is a very open racist, but subtle and sly about his racism. Earlier in the evening, that particular evening, had apparently called one of the busboys the N-word, but did it in such a way that they couldn't prove it, so they couldn't throw him out because he's a regular who plays that "I always stay here" fucking card bullshit. Um, Apparently had been harassing several women. And we've seen since this came out DMs sent to Joe Schilling about this particular piece of shit, thanking him for standing up for the busboy that this guy was berating, thanking him for standing up for the ladies that this guy was berating and harassing at this bar. That this guy is one of those guys, one of those kind of assholes that you see in every bar eventually that you just want to fucking pound in the ground like a railroad spike because he's a scumbag. Joe Schilling got the chance. This dude pump fake flexed on Joe Schilling while Joe Schilling is wearing a shirt that says Ring Cage Parking Lot. This guy clearly can't read the signs. Talk shit, got hit. The bad part here is that the gentleman, once he realized who the fuck Joe Schilling actually was, decided that he was going to press battery charges and file a lawsuit against Joe Schilling. Um, as you can tell in the gift, there are plenty of people out there who have the video. I personally have a copy of the original video with audio, so you can actually hear this guy talking shit about being a badass. And then he fucking calls, you can hear him call Joe Schilling out. After he bumps into Joe, Joe brushes him off. You can hear this loudmouth little fuckstick go, "Hey!" And Joe turns around, and then you see him clear as day. I don't know if it's that clear in the beginning of the video in the gift that I use, but you can see in the video itself, clear as fucking day. He fucking flexed. He called Joe Schilling to turn around and flexed on him, which from a bad motherfucker trained in the ways of ass whooping like Joe Schilling, that situation elicits a very specific response. 1, 2, good night. Loudmouth assholes on the ground, unfucking conscious where he fucking deserved to be. I hope Joe Schilling gets out of this because he was absolutely defending himself. That dude flexed on Joe Schilling like he was going to hit him, so he absolutely was defending himself. Fuck that guy. I hope everything comes out okay for Joe. That being said, we've got some less interesting news. Luis Smoka pulled out of the fight against Sean O'Malley for UFC 264 next weekend. So that put that clown right back into the goddamn headlines again, and he got to talk shit to a bunch of people he didn't have any right to talk shit to again. The one thing I will say that douchebag O'Malley did do properly is he called out Ricky Simone for the replacement fight because they're trying to keep him on the card next weekend. That I do agree with. Ricky Simone versus Sean, I think would be a fair matchup. I'm still pretty sure Ricky beat the shit out of that clown, but I think that would be a fairly good matchup. I am pleased to announce though that rather than making that matchup, they gave that clown something even more insulting in my opinion. A brand new newcomer making their debut, Chris Moutinho, 9-4 in his pro career. So let's see. I don't want to see O'Malley come in and just clean out some soup can here. He's done more than enough of that, and he's talked shit after everyone. I genuinely hope that we turn out to see Chris Moutinho be a bad motherfucker, and I want to see him beat the shit out of Sean O'Malley, because fuck that clown. The Sugar Show is over. July 24th. Rafael Asunciao is injured, has had to pull out, undisclosed injury. So they actually announced Julian Paiva will stay on the card and will now be taking on Kyler Phillips, which I think is a pretty interesting matchup as well. So this is the point where I'm going to fall back again to some of the crazy shit that has gone on this week pertaining to last week's card and how it ended up. We got the official announcement. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me step back just a little bit and preface that a little better. We got I don't remember if it was a leak or if it was a straight up announcement from Dana that Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou negotiations for that title fight have broken down. That fight is no longer happening. Francis Ngannou literally just got back from Cameroon, where he was on his victory tour after winning the championship belt. For those not aware, Francis has now been the champion just over 3 calendar months. They were trying to put together the Derek Lewis versus Francis fight for September, or excuse me, for August. Francis kept saying he would rather fight in September. UFC apparently didn't want to play ball with that. Did not like that idea. We found out Tuesday afternoon, I believe. I believe it was Tuesday afternoon. UFC 265, taking place on August 7th, has had a last-minute addition made to the card, where previously was going to be headlined by Amanda Nunes defending her bantamweight belt against Juliana Pena, which some were saying may again be Amanda's last fight. She does not have a lot of fights left in her. She has said she's ready to do the family thing, and she's basically been undefeated for a couple years now in 2 divisions. So it was going to be a nice moment for Amanda to potentially show out, beat the shit out of Juliana like everyone knows she's going to do, and then maybe lay her gloves down and retire a champion and walk out. No, we're not going to get to see that be the headline anymore, because the UFC has decided that there weren't enough gold on that card. So they have added last minute, the UFC 265 will now be headlined. They have bumped Amanda to the fucking co-main event, which is insulting enough unto itself, to add the headline of Derek Lewis versus Cyril Gane for the interim heavyweight championship belt. The UFC is so clearly already on its bullshit. They have put an interim title in the heavyweight division 3 months after Francis Ngannou just won the belt after waiting a year and a half for his title shot. They are already talking about potentially stripping him if he is not able to compete in a timely fashion, because fuck Dana. But they have already put together an interim title fight 3 calendar months after the belt was won. The champion's not injured. The champion is back in America and healthy. Literally just got home from his fucking victory tour. But because he was not willing to turn around and fight in August, he said he wanted to fight in September to make sure he's got a full proper camp. The UFC has now put together a fucking interim belt with his former teammate, former training partner, like we fucking called last week, the narrative that they are so rushing to try and make the fight out of the former training partners, because fucking Dana loves that shit. So they are putting Cyril Gane, who literally just fought Saturday, back in in a month and a week. So almost 6 weeks from now, turn around right back into the fucking cage for an interim title fight against Derek Lewis. That's There's so much wrong with that. There's so much wrong with that, and it's such a great example of how much of a scumbag Dana White is at the end of the day. Um, Moving along from there, we did get the official confirmation. Sean Brady versus Kevin Lee has officially been rebooked for the August 28th UFC event. We got the announcement that everyone's favorite badass Impa Kasanganay, who is now training down at Sanford MMA in Florida, excuse me, um, is getting back in there for one more go at things against Carlston Harris on September 18th. Um, Imp is on a hell of a fucking win coming off that Palatnikov fucking fight. He's 2-1. Other than the fucking ass whipping from Buckley that he got in the spinning kick heard around the world, Impa's not too fucking terrible. Um, Harris is 16-4 versus Impa's 9-1 overall record. Going to be an interesting fight. I believe. Um, Also added to that September 18th card. I don't want to say it's as exciting. It's another exciting announcement. Always excited to see Jim fucking Miller get back in the octagon, and we have officially got that return date of September 18th. The UFC, you can tell, is kind of trying to politely push him towards the door now, which is bullshit. They're putting him up against another guy making his debut in the UFC, Nicholas Mota. Um, Miller is currently sitting at an even 32-16 in his career, still tied for most fights in UFC history. Mota comes in at 12-3. And he's a Contender Series douchebag. So now I hope Jim really just beats the shit out of him. Notable win on his record is Joe Selecki. So not the strongest resume to brag about. I really hope Jim Miller beats the shit out of him. Here we go. Two more. Oops, shit. Wrong button. There we go. Two more little things before we go. The first one I will talk about here. Michael Bisping was attacked. I get that that's not generally something that you would make light out of or joke around about, but in this situation, it's appropriate because Michael Bisping literally laughed his assailant away. As the story goes, he was down in New Orleans with his family. He was out and about. Some guy saw Michael Bisping filming on his cell phone, got up in his face. Bisping told him to go the fuck away. He literally reached up and cold-cocked Bisping, who promptly started literally laughing at him in the face. Here. He says, I laughed at him and I walked away. Man, I'm getting mature these days. The dude hit him so weak that all he could do was laugh. And Bisping actually found the picture of the dude who swung at him, and it's not a face shot. It's a side profile as the dude's walking away. But just to let people know, like, just because you can hit somebody don't mean it's going to mean something. If you hit like a bitch, you need to learn you hit like a bitch, and definitely not instigate fights with dudes bigger than you who laugh at you. So good on the count for handling that like a badass. That could have gone very, very the other direction and been very not good for that stupid individual who thought it was going to be a good idea to swing on Bisping. But the last little piece of news and information here we will go over before I let you find folks head on down the road for the evening. Former Glory kickboxing champion Jason the Psycho Willness has decided that he is officially making the move like many of his other kickboxing compatriots and coming into the world of MMA. He has officially signed with Levels Fight League. The LFL is another one of the they call them feeder organizations, not in a derogatory manner, just in that they are organizations where people generally go to be noticed by the UFC or Bellator or PFL or Rizin or One or the larger organizations. Um, the reason the name Jason Wilness will be familiar to a lot of the more hardcore fans like myself and will most likely soon be familiar to some of the casuals around the world. Um, in his glory kickboxing days, Jason holds notable wins over guys like Joe Schilling and was the last person to defeat Israel, the last stylebender Adesanya in kickboxing before Adesanya made his move into the world of MMA. So this is not just some dude who's decided that he's not going to kickbox anymore. He's going to come to MMA. This is a dude who beat someone the likes of Joe fucking Schilling. This is the dude who handed the last stylebender his last L in kickboxing before he came over to the world of MMA. And we've seen what Adesanya has done to the world of MMA since then. If you've seen Joe Schilling in the world of MMA, he's definitely made a very good transition. Raymond Daniels has made a very good transition from kickboxing over to MMA. Giga Chikadze has made a very good transition from kickboxing over to MMA. There's a very, very, very plausible path for kickboxing fighters to make their way into the UFC or into the world of MMA in general. They basically just have to adapt in some grappling and ground game. They've got all the striking, the kicks, and the punches for the most part, especially when you're top level. And this top level, it's going to be very interesting to see how long it takes before either the UFC or somebody snatches Jason Wilness up and puts him on a fucking roster. With the names that he beat in kickboxing with a little bit of experience in MMA, that guy is going to be a fucking problem. I'm telling you right now. But that is all we've got for this particular episode. So thank you to everyone who tuned in. I see you folks in the chat there. Thank you to everyone who is going to catch this on the audio replay. I hope everyone has a safe and responsible 4th of July Independence weekend. If you are in America, don't blow your fucking hand off. Don't drink and pow. Let someone handle the explosions if you're going to be having the cocktails. Don't be an idiot. I hope to see everyone back next week to talk about all of the craziness that will be the Poirier-McGregor trilogy fight going down next weekend at UFC 264. But that is all we've got for this particular episode. If you would like some cheese curds and instructions on how to get to Kenosha Crippler, Golf T Vapes over on YouTube. If you would like to learn how to make bathtub e-liquid and just be a goddamn good human being, Fresh03 over on YouTube. If you want to learn how to really struggle at growing a beard or be an up-and-coming amateur pro fighter, RJ MMA Official over on, I think he's only on Instagram right now. You can follow I'm No Joe everywhere else. If you enjoy what we do here on the I'm No Joe channel, give us a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed and you got that little bell rung so you don't miss an episode. If, on the other hand, I and my dumbass friends are just fools getting in front of cameras, talking out our asses without knowing what we're actually saying, go ahead and give us a thumbs down. We earned it and we won't dispute it. That being said, we're going to call it all for this particular episode. So until next time, folks, don't let ignorance stop you. You can root for anything. Unless you thought I wasn't going to make a second McAfee joke. Hang around, folks. We'll be back next week.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kicks were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. How do I say goodbye to what we had? The good times.